We're going there today. If you've ever had to say goodbye to a beloved pet, this conversation will speak to your soul. We're joined by Gale Wilkinson, animal communicator, dog rescuer, and now author of a powerful new book that chronicles her journey through losing her beloved dog, Samson, discovering her spiritual gifts, and using that pain to help others heal. Gale's story is one of heartbreak, love, magic, and synchronicity. Her new book, Samson's Story, A Tale of Pet Loss, Grief, Love, Hope, and Magic, isn't just a guide through grief, it's a lifeline. I can attest to that because I read it after I lost my own beloved dog, Eddie. Every page is infused with wisdom, vulnerability, and the reminder that love never dies. It just changes form. Samson is still guiding her and possibly helping her find him again in this lifetime. We're going to talk about pet grief, animal communication, reincarnation, and what it really means to stay connected to our furry family, even after they cross over. Plus, synchronicities that will blow your mind, and Gale's mission to rescue labs in need through her nonprofit, Gale Loves Dogs. Get ready to laugh, cry, and believe in a little bit of magic. Hi, Gale. Hi, Karen.
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to this for such a long time since you shared your book with both of us. We loved it so much, and we know this is a story that needs to be shared with all of our listeners because I think all of us feel so much for our pets. And when pet grief hits us, it's so different than human grief because our pets are so beloved and are unconditional.
Exactly. And we knew you with Samson, and then we knew as you were going through this process. And then when you actually did end up losing him, we knew how devastating that was for you. And as Karen said, having lost pets before, it is next level. And especially when it's a soul dog or soul pet, there's such this very unexplained bond. And we would love to hear more about who Samson was and what made your bond so uniquely powerful.
Well, I love the term soul dog. I think a lot of people experience that. And I heard that so much when I was doing research for the book and talking to folks after Samson passed away. So I would say he's one of my soul dogs, maybe the brightest one. And I found him in 2017. I knew at that time I was ready to adopt my first dog as an adult. And so I had been watching some dogs on Rover, and there was this lovely brown lab named Penelope who was about 5 years old. And I told the Chicago Lab Rescue that I would like to foster to adopt a dog. They told me to go to their site and pick one out. But I said, I have no idea how to pick one. They're all so cute. And all I know is I want an older one, a friendly one, and I can pick them up on August 5th. And that was in 2017. And so very funny, started to hear the name Samson as I was out and about in various ways. So I was with Penelope, that same dog, in the dog park. There was a husky there with his owner, and I kept in my mind calling this husky Samson, even though I knew the husky's name was Jameson, which I thought was super weird. And then I was actually on a date with a guy a couple weeks later in Wicker Park in Chicago, and there was a gal in front of us getting ice cream. And he's, "What's the name of your dog? Samson?" Because she had this little dog in her arms, and she said, "No, it's Gus," or whatever it was. And I looked at him and I asked, "Where did that come from? I've been thinking of the name Samson." He said, "I don't know, it just popped in my mind."
Oh my God.
And then a few weeks later, I finally got the email from the Chicago Lab Rescue, and they said, "Hey, we found your dog. He's 6 to 7 years old. He's a yellow lab. He's super sweet. He loves walks. He's got a thyroid condition, so he'll be on medicine. He's ready to pick up on August 5th, and his name's Samson." And I about fell out of my chair. But when I met Samson, I knew he was meant to find me. In fact, he found me the day after I was processing a lot of childhood trauma and grief that really just came to me at that time in my life unexpectedly. And I had already set up getting him. And so he literally came in the day after this. So it was a magic moment in my life.
So then what ended up happening last year, inspiring you to write this book?
So I found out that Samson was declining rapidly at the beginning of May of 2024. We have a property in Tennessee where we've been spending the winters, and then we were on our way to Chicago. So we made it to Chicago, and I could tell on the drive Samson wasn't doing great. So I took him to the vet the next day, and they said that his liver and kidney levels were pretty high and they wanted to do some more tests. Brought him back a few days later and they confirmed with a cytology analysis that he did in fact have pretty bad cancer. So the doctor at the time gave us about a month, maybe up to 2 months of time left with him. And at that point, I kicked into, okay, what is coming now that I know that we're at the end of Samson's life here? And during that time, a lot of things unfolded. And I talked to animal communicators, which I know we're going to go through here in a little bit. But one of the things that they shared that Samson told them is that he wanted me to write a book. And he has told me that many times before to share information and stories. And so I had a very clear understanding that I needed to write his story. And so we spent that time during his sunset period, just really being with him. And right after he passed away, I started writing the book.
Just going back to what we were saying before, Gale, not everybody can relate to losing a pet. How does that feel different than losing a loved one or a relative or a family member?
There's a wonderful TED Talk on this by an emergency vet named Sarah Hogan, but she summarizes it very well. And there are some reasons that losing a pet actually does feel different than losing a person. And I think the biggest one is the fact that animals love us unconditionally. So it's that acceptance and that love that it actually, and there's science behind this, there are more neural networks and pathways that are built between an animal bond versus a human bond because there's nothing negative about the relationship with a pet. It's all positive coming from the pet to you. And scientifically speaking, that connection just is a little bit different than with a human. The other things that make it a little bit more difficult is we are making the decisions for our pets. I would liken it to an aging parent or a special needs child. That's the closest human corollary that we have, where we have to make decisions on behalf of someone else or our pet. And a lot of times people struggle with that because the pet can't tell us exactly how they're feeling and we have to try and make that decision. And then there are some other things. Oftentimes, a pet is more than a pet. Sometimes they are a service animal. They've been through us through really difficult times, or the pet is a link to someone else, whether it's a human or another pet, and losing them, you feel that first loss even more, which all of these things in collection make losing an animal really difficult.
That really explains.
It does. And even hearing you talk about it in that way, it makes me, first of all, I feel like I feel Samson right now. And also having gone through pet grief somewhat recently as well, I just want to cry because it's speaking such truth in that way. I can remember how I felt right after we had to say goodbye to Eddie. And I hadn't felt that kind of sadness and grief in many years. So how were you, and when did you start actually capturing all of this for the book?
I did take some notes while he was still alive, but not many. I pieced his sunset period together after he passed away. And then there's a portion of the book where I write letters to Samson, and that's to help chronicle my journey with the grief. That's at the very end of the book. So I did write that down as I went through it. But really, I think that Samson wrote the book, even the title, A Tale with the TAIL crossed out, and then TALE of Pet Loss, Grief, Love, Hope, and Magic popped into my mind. And when I was stuck on something, I would ask Samson, and he's the one that told me to write him letters to help share my story. And so it was a situation where I really wanted to share his story. I think he wants to share his story. And I just trusted that I am meant to be more of a conduit to help this information get out to a lot of people.
So let's talk then about animal communication. So we're going to talk about how Samson started communicating with you, which clearly he did even before you got him, the way that all worked out, right? There was that connection that we can't see even before you actually physically had him. But where did animal communication, because you even talked about how you reached out to animal communicators during this time while he was sick. So was that something you were always open to? Karen and I know you, so we know animal communication is something that you've been interested for a long time. Where did that come from?
And how do you define it, Gale?
I think of animal communication as the telepathic connection where you get information from an animal. It could be literally any animal, wildlife, cats, dogs, horses. For my personal journey, my seeking journey started in 2017. Samson did come in literally at the very beginning of when I started to recognize that there was magic and there was something else going on in the universe that I needed to learn about. And from that period on, I did a lot of different readings where I would go to experts and try and learn different things about myself and my past and past lives. And in 2019, as I was on that journey, I remember seeing a video on Facebook, and it was a woman in South Africa, and she was working with a black leopard. The black leopard's name was Devil in whatever language it had been named in, and it wanted to be renamed Spirit. And she did work with it. She communicated to it, and the cat turned around because it had been a problem and now it's not. And I watched this short video and thought, what is this? And I'm so interested in it. So I took a course on Udemy from a woman named Claire Bloomfield who lives in the UK. I think I only spent $100, and I literally just wrote down what Claire did, and I started to practice on friends' dogs and cats. And the way that it works for me, and I've listened to a bunch of other communicators and talked to them, it's pretty similar for everyone. You effectively do grounding and protection work, you get into a meditative state, and you're listening for information that's coming through from another source. In this particular instance, it would be an animal. And the things that would come through were mind-blowing to me. How I knew them, I don't know. Every single reading I've done, and I've probably done 40 or 50 readings for folks at this point in time, still blows my mind. And I just have to trust that it is real. And I am actually talking to these dogs telepathically, and I don't even have to be with them. I do it all with a picture. So I want to see their eyes and know a little bit about them. And then I open the channel and I just listen and I write everything down.
Wow. And I also want people to know that Gale comes from such a different professional world, which is what also adds to the credibility, I'd say, of who you are and what you're doing. You're from the financial and investment world. So this is a very different side of you that we're very honored to be able to share. And so grateful that you're following that path too and trusting it, because it is so different than the facts and the data and all of that. And I love that you're even able to bring some of that into the book, which is helping people from that kind of data perspective see how they too can connect with their pets and how that might work. How did Samson then start communicating with you after he passed?
The day that he died, we had him put to sleep with a euthanasia vet that came to our house around noon on a Saturday. And that evening, I remember hearing him very clearly for the first time. And I was at a fire in my backyard with my husband and a couple of friends. And I had a surprise visitor that night. It was a gal named Amy who ran the Magic Dog Bus in Tennessee. And she was in Chicago. She was actually going to see us and take Samson and I to an organization's event. It's called Live Like Rue. It's a cancer fighting organization. They do wonderful things for families that are impacted by dog cancer. And so they had a fundraiser that evening. It was their sneaker ball, and Samson and I were going to be guests with Amy. And unfortunately, Samson declined very quickly and we couldn't go. But Amy was there and she told me the event was wonderful. They actually honored Samson at the event. He was up on the big screen and they were going to give him, I told myself I wouldn't cry, but here we go. They were going to honor him as a Live Brew dog and give him his bucket list. And that night at the fire, I heard him tell me very clearly, "Mommy, I didn't need to be there because you gave me my bucket list. I already did it. And it should go to the other dogs." And it was so sad for me that he missed that because he was such a light and he was so much love. And I know he would have absolutely been thrilled to be with all the people there today. But it was really cool to hear him tell me that he'd already lived his life exactly like he wanted. And I know that was him talking to me. And from that time forward, I've been able to communicate with him relatively easily after his passing. And if you talk to animal communicators, it's a lot more difficult for us to talk to our dogs who are alive because we know them so well and our ego gets in the way. But once he passed, this was my first dog as an adult that passed, and I was really shocked by how clear that channel was.
So when he was with you, did you ever have those moments where you felt like you were telepathically communicating to him? Did you have that? Or did that really not happen until he crossed?
Not really, to be honest. And I think all of us who have animals, we can attest to, we know them really well. We do talk to them. We feel like they talk back to us, and we are all communicating. But with the format through which I do animal communication, it comes in a different way. for anybody that does mediumship or psychic readings or Akashic record readings or any kind of readings, it's similar to that where you can know stuff, you can hear stuff, you can see stuff, you can feel stuff, and it's very clear that it's not me. And I didn't feel that clarity until after he passed away.
So then what were the messages that started coming through that then inspired the book and really even the format of the book, because it's unique?
Yeah, I just would ask him to help me, and an outline would pop up or the first paragraph would pop up. I'm actually surprised when I read it. I feel like it actually does read like a real book, and I've never written a book. And
it does, Gale. It's really well done.
It's really Samson.
Yeah.
And there was an event that happened in July. So this was a couple months after he passed away. And I was very depressed at this point in time. And I walk through all this in the book, and I talk about my own process and the stages of grief. And for me, the depression was the hardest. And I think that's probably typical for many people. And so that night around midnight, I'm in bed and I'm not asleep yet. And I can definitely sense that Samson is right above me to my right. And actually, my sister's dog passed away a few years prior. Cooper, Chocolate Lab, is to my left, and they're both right there. And just like I talked about it at the fire, where I could hear him like I hear the other animals, that's what started coming through. And so I grabbed my phone and I wrote down everything that Samson was telling me. And we go into this in the book, but actually Samson's decline, I believe, was caused by a shot that he had from Zoetis, and it's called Librela. So just caution everybody to please research if you wanted to give your dog Librela, or really any shot or any medicine, because it's not clear, especially for new drugs, if they're safe or not. So he told me, and I was very upset at this point in time because I just realized that it was likely that shot that led to his decline. He said, "It's okay that this happened. You weren't meant to know about it until now, but we are supposed to sound the alarm on it." And he started to tell me about what he wanted me to do to get better. And this is a key theme with animals. They do not want us to be upset. They want us to get better as fast as possible. They want us to love other animals and to be happy because they can feel that. They are still here with us for a couple months after they pass away, I believe. And so he was telling me about what I needed to do. He was telling me about the book. He was telling me about how he wants to come back and how that's going to happen. He also told me that we would get another dog. It would be the third foster that we would keep. And I hadn't thought about this because as soon as Samson told me he was coming back, I was going to hold my second dog spot for Samson. He had other plans for me. And Cooper also gave me some cool messages from my sister that night. So I wrote all of it down, and that's all in the book as well.
So wait, you just gave something away there about Samson saying he's coming back.
Yes. He told multiple animal communicators that he would come back. He told me the same thing. And I asked him first. Before he passed away, I did specifically ask him, what signs will you send me? And if you are planning to come back, what does that look like? And he told me he would be a smallish yellow dog, similar in look and feel, but smaller than he was in this life. And that it would happen 4 to 6 months later, and he would be with a dog named Lily. So those are the things that Samson told me. And he said I would start to hear a name when it was closer to him coming in, and that's how I would know that it was him. He gave some messages to different animal communicators, even about random things like it will be his left paw that he uses as a way to say I love you, versus in the Samson body, he uses right paw.
As we know, Jamie Breeze is another animal communicator that you talked to as well, and she had a similar story. And I love the fact that you said that Samson is going to give you those clues in names, just like he gave you about himself before he came into your life as well. So I just wonder, like, for some people listening, that might be a really bizarre concept that their pets could actually come back to them.
And even hope, like, I think it gives people so much hope if they can actually believe and grasp that. And knowing that we do know Jamie Breeze and her dog came back, and she 1,000% knows this is the same soul that she has already been within this lifetime. And I know when we've talked to other people who've lost their beloved soul pets, when they hear this, they're like, oh my God, how do I start to figure that out? And not everybody's going to be an animal communicator like you, but the possibility that it exists is tremendous.
In fact, one dog just ran by me. Murphy is reincarnated from another dog that I had as a child. His name was Elwood. And there's a crazy story I won't go into, but it is in the book. It's very cool. And so I cannot explain that story through any data logic or anything other than magic. So it has happened to me. I know that it's real. I believe, based on my research and trying to really understand how it happens, that there are a couple different ways reincarnation can take place. So one is that the full soul comes in again. And I think that's what most of us think about. But there are also other forms, I believe, where aspects of the soul can come in, or it can be a helper soul. So your soul can come in and out within another dog's body. So that dog has his own soul, but there are aspects or the full soul coming in and out as a helper. And there are also different schools of thought on how long it takes for an animal to have to be on the other side before they can come back. I think it can happen as fast as you want it to happen or it's meant to happen. Some say it needs to take years. Like Murphy took 10 years before he came back after Ella passed away. But I hope Samson comes back much faster than that, obviously. And then some people say that reincarnation has to be written in the cards. I don't believe that. I think you can ask for it. So if you want your soul dog to come back, ask for it.
Talk about an empowering.
And you know what else? One other thing I do want to bring up about animal communication is that it can be for both living or pets that have passed on.
That's correct. And some communicators specialize in talking to pets who have passed. Some specialize in reincarnation, like Jamie Breeze is a great person to talk to if you want to get insights about where should I look? When will it happen? What will the dog look like?
Yeah. And then for those pets that are actually living, but you're trying to better understand them. For instance, you know, when you foster a dog and you don't know its background, talking to an animal communicator that does specialize in talking to the living pets is super helpful because you get that background that you may not have been able to get from the place that you adopted or foster that pet. So I just want to bring that up too.
Yep.
So with the book, you've said it's short by design. So what do you feel that pet parents most need to know in these really hard and fragile moments?
Whether your pet has been given a diagnosis where they don't have a lot of time left or you've just lost one, know this. You did everything right. This is not your fault. And your pet does not want you to feel guilt. I think are the most important things to remember. Dr. Hogan, back to that TED Talk, which everybody I think should listen to if you're struggling with pet loss grief at all. It really can be helpful to remember that we are doing the best that we can at all times. Like we can't control for all accidents that might happen. We as people will look at an event that was bad. So the loss of a pet is bad, and we will replay it in our minds again and again and try to dissect it and analyze it and understand, what did I do? What could I have done differently? Why didn't I do that? And we almost beat ourselves up. But she says, hey, this is an evolutionary process where if you put your hand on a hot stove and you burn yourself, you go and you think about, what did I do? Because I don't want that to happen again. So there's a reason, because we're human, that we go back and we replay all of that, but we have to acknowledge that's not because we did anything wrong. It's just because that's how our minds work. And we have to accept that everything's okay with what went down. And our pet really does want us to move forward and to forgive ourselves for anything that we're upset about in the process.
Can you talk about the structure of the book? Because it's really good, like the way you tell his story up front, but then all the information that you give in the back end. How did you decide to do it that way? I know you said Samson, but what was the intention around the way you told the story?
Yeah, there are a number of books on pet loss grief, and I actually list a number of them in the first appendix. So there are lots of great stories, but the way that I wanted to tell this one is to start with what actually happened with Samson. So it starts on the day that he passes away, which a lot of people tell me it's really hard to read. So you can definitely skip that part of the book if you need to and come back to it. And then I go back in time and I tell his adoption story and just his life, so you get a sense for who Samson is quickly. And then I spend a lot of time in his 2.5-week period, which I call the sunset. And that's when I know he's going to pass away. And how do we come up with a treatment plan or a non-treatment plan? Because sometimes you shouldn't do anything and just spend time with them. And what kind of food did I try? And what did I do right? And what do I wish I would have done? I wish I would have blocked off the back stairs because he fell down them. And a lot of ailing pets do this. So if you have one, please make sure that they can't fall downstairs. And just the ups and the downs. And there are great things that happen. Like I told a lot of people in our neighborhood, and it was really awesome to not have to hold it in. And I had random strangers crying to me about their pets who passed away years ago. And I just realized we need to talk about this. And it's not something that is acceptable in society. So after we get through the sunset period and we talk about the experience of a vet coming in to do euthanasia, I talk about tips for during that sunset period. What specifically can you do tangibly to try and make it better for yourself and your pet? And then we talk about guilt and grief specifically for pet loss, because those are the two things that come up in the data that I have, which is really hard for people. And then we talk about the magics, the reincarnation and animal communication. And we touch on things to do after your pet passes away that can make it a little bit better for you. And then finally, we go through the letters that I wrote to Samson during my own grief process so you can see my ups and downs.
You collected data from over 100 pet parents. What stood out to you the most?
The thing that I was surprised the most by is that 70% of respondents felt guilt about their pet's death. 70% felt guilty. And that's really unfortunate. But I understand it. Back to the replay, we all go back and we think about everything. What's more helpful in the data is getting the open-ended responses about what people wish they would have done differently. And when you read through those, people wish they wouldn't have felt so guilty. They wish they would have forgiven themselves. And when I asked how long the process took, the average number of months from those who felt like they had gone through it was 13.
Yeah.
So over 1 year, the grieving process. So if you're in the middle of it, just know that this is totally normal.
That stood out to me too, big time. And having gone through a very quick goodbye to Eddie, where we didn't know how sick he was. And we were doing, in quotes, all the right things. I kept going to the vet and nobody saw anything until it was way too late. And to the point where he basically had a week to live. And I struggled with that guilt. And it isn't quite a year. And I miss him so much. I also know that had he not left, I wouldn't have met our dog Lucy, who you introduced us to, which I definitely want to relate to what you are doing now in terms of Gale Loves Dogs and your connection with animals. I see the bigger picture and it's still just so sad.
No, it's awful. I still cry random moments about Samson. Tried to cry a lot before I got on the podcast today, but I still cried. But it's one of those things where, for as hard as it is, I am so glad that I had him. And now I have 3 that are running around right now. And I'm sure that when they pass away, it's going to be just as hard. It's different with every dog, still hard. But I will probably be doing this for the rest of my life.
Yes.
More dogs.
Yes.
For those, when we first met you, Robyn and I were like, God, she's like such a badass executive, so strong and fiery. And we saw your sort of exterior, Gale, and it's so incredible to hear your story through this and to walk with you through some of it, to see how a dog could impact your soul in such a deep and profound way. And was any of this unexpected for you after you adopted him? Did you find yourself just almost blown away by the depth of love that you felt? And how did that change you in this journey?
I don't think I realized it until later, how he really taught me what unconditional love was. And I think all pets do this. They're here for a reason. So from all of my communications with various animals, oftentimes the reading is about the animal, but it's for the person. They have messages for their person. They're trying to help their person. There is a soul contract with their person. And so I think that Samson and I have been in multiple lives together, and our contract in this life, he was supposed to come in and basically do a couple things. One is help me to heal personally and learn what unconditional love was, but also to set the stage for the next chapter of my life, which I feel very called to help people through their animals, specifically dogs, things like the pet loss grief and how do we get better products for our dogs that are actually healthy and sustainable, not plastic. And how do we rethink dog rescue and rethink animal rights laws and things like that, that I believe that the next chapter of my life is really where I should be spending on that. And that's definitely due to Samson.
And when you think about what you said at the beginning of this conversation, that he came into your life the day after you learned so much about trauma from childhood and so forth. What a healer and what a teacher.
Yeah.
And it is incredible to see, even in the time that we know you, how much you have found this calling and this next chapter. It's profound. And that you could really honor both sides of yourself because you are such a badass in all aspects, right? And you can be somewhat more vulnerable in this one. And through that vulnerability, you're helping so many other people heal and live more fulfilled lives.
And in your story, too, I think, even for people who don't have this relationship with a pet, to understand the simplicity of what a pet can give to you, right? As you said at the beginning, there's no actual verbal conversation, but you're together. They're with you. They sit with you, are unconditionally loving you. And it's such a great role model for all of us. Here we are, we're always thinking we have to do so much for everyone in our lives. And there's such wonderful examples of just be there, just love, and the profound effect that it can have on us. I've never thought about it until this conversation and just in that way, but it's so simple and yet so profoundly powerful.
It is very simple. The core themes that come through the animal communications that I do is that, one, they're always willing to talk. They all love their person so much. They all want consistency and routine. They all want to feel a part of a family and like they have a job or they have a purpose. And that's really the core. The other thing that I hear every single time that I ask it, because I get questions a lot, when is it the right time to put my dog down if they are sick? The dogs and cats always say, I trust my person 100%. So when you, the parent, feels it in your gut, you will know, and the dog or cat or your pet, whoever it is, trusts you to make that decision. And if you think it should be done sooner, great. If you want to wait, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, like every single one I've talked to, put 100% love and trust in their person. That's the only place they want to be. They're very happy. In fact, they're so happy until the very end. So when we think that they're in pain, I've had some people have me do readings and they're like, my dog has this massive tumor and I feel like they're in a ton of pain. The dog actually didn't tell me that they were in a ton of pain. And I really think that's because if they're here, they're walking around, they're eating, they're drinking, they're okay. It's when they can't do those things that you really know, hey, like this is the end. And they have been totally fine up until that point. So that's why we can't feel guilt or remorse or sadness for anything that's happened, as long as we just pay attention to the signs and we say goodbye when we think it's the right moment.
I've heard they don't fear dying the way
No.
because they're so connected to that love and they know why they're here. Like you said, they know they have a purpose for being here. And it's just another good lesson. Just make the transition. They'll stay close by. They'll still send messages if we listen and look for them.
Yeah. Samson told another communicator that's really good named Mary Helen Schmidt. He said, I want it to be a rocket and I want to go really fast. And I think that part of that is because Samson had really bad joints and hip dysplasia in his life and it impacted him. He couldn't do a lot that other dogs could do. And so he knew that as soon as he passes away, he can literally go anywhere. And he was so excited for that.
Wow. What other signs would you suggest that people can ask for from their deceased pets?
I think the big ones are names, so familiar names, songs that remind you of them. And then there are things like colors that often come through. Birds is a big one, butterflies. If there is a person that you think of with your pet or any kind of name or something like that, that your pet can use that as a way to be like, hey, I'm here. This is me. So when I asked Samson before he passed away, he told me he would send me birds in unusual places and pink and green things, as well as send me yellow labs and golden retrievers. So I saw a lot of those things, especially right after he passed away.
And you ended up adopting a golden mix.
Yes, she's a golden mix.
Yeah.
And her name is Lark, which is a bird's name. She came with that name. And back to that download I had from Samson, he said the third foster you'll keep. That's the very last thing he told me, which I thought was super weird. And Lark was the third foster that we got because we had gone back to Chicago Lab Rescue. And this is a point of contention for people. Do I get another dog or not?
I was just going to ask you.
Yes.
That was my next question.
Yes. Well, do I get one or not? And for me, I needed another dog around. I had Murphy. Murphy was very depressed after Samson died. He loved his older brother. And so I know for myself and for Murphy, we needed to foster. We weren't ready to adopt, but I went to the Chicago Lab Rescue. Hey, can we start to foster ASAP? So about 6 or 8 weeks after Samson died, we got our first one. Lark was the third one. And we weren't planning on keeping a dog, but it was a bird and she reminded us so much of Samson. The only reason I came out of my depression was because of Lark.
And we remember when you were just fostering Lark and she would come on the Zoom in your arms and you could see her light. And I've been fortunate enough to meet her in person too. She's light. And so it makes sense.
Can you talk for a minute too, for those who might not quite understand about the letters that you and Samson, the communication that you guys had? What is that? Just describe that a little bit and how you got yourself comfortable enough to actually do that and really feel into that communication.
There were 2 parts of the book that I didn't know how to write immediately. A lot of it just popped in there, but I didn't know how to cover guilt and grief until about 3 months after Samson passed away. And I feel like I had to go through enough of it and then it clicked for me. And the other piece was, how do I tell my part of the story? Because I always wanted to focus on Samson, which is why the book is called Samson's Story. But I felt like I needed to share my thoughts. And there are even really terrible things that I did, like right after Samson died and Murphy was misbehaving. And I wished for anything I could trade Murphy for Samson. And there are these things that happen that are just real. And I wanted to share that in a really raw way. So I knew I needed to write the letters because Samson said, write me letters. I started to do that maybe a month after he passed away. And so I did go back in time and what was happening and what would I tell him? And it's very similar to the animal communication caring, where I would try to just be empty in terms of my ego or thoughts, and then what kind of comes through. And in that instance, it's not just hearing someone else, but it's letting my higher self talk through to Samson and basically tell him what I was going through at that time so that people could understand. When I was in the car and I wanted to trade Murphy for Samson, I said that out loud. So by sharing that in the letter, you can see what the daily good and bad was of that period.
It's so therapeutic to get it out of your thoughts and then actually having that tangible letter that you can go back and read over and over again. I think for those who are grieving, it's something tangible that they can do if they just trust the process, just allow it to come through. And they're beautiful and they're so raw and honest and open. And it's really a powerful way to face your grief and really walk through it instead of avoiding it or just trying to just shuffle on through. Like, you really took the time to feel into it and learn from it, learn what the lesson really was for you. And that connected you and Samson even more so forever, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a way for you to process. And it's something that everyone can do on their own. But that is such a useful tool that we all have. Also, tell us where all of this has led to creating Gale Loves Dogs.
Yes, I believe that I'm supposed to really focus my efforts here. And so the book is recently out, but I also want to share more content. And one of the things that I've done over the last few years is rescue dogs. So Robyn mentioned Lucy. She's one of the 19 dogs that I've helped to find a better life. And I wanted to formalize that. So I recently opened a rescue called Gale Loves Dogs. So what I will be doing is helping people find animals that fit their lifestyle. So rather than tell me maybe what breed you want, do you want it to have short hair because you don't like to groom a dog, and have medium energy or high energy, or be older or be younger, kid friendly? There are lots of different attributes to think about. And because I live in Tennessee part of the year, unfortunately, there are a ton of amazing animals in shelters here. And so I want to be able to pair people up with the right dog for them to make sure that there's a great match. So that's the goal. All proceeds from the book will actually go to Gale Loves Dogs and be used to save many more dogs.
Yeah. And I think what you and I have talked about, which is something that I just think is such a gift, is that you really, because there is a little bit of magic in who you are and what you do. There is something about when you reach out to you about, I'm looking for a dog, and this is what I'm looking for in terms of what you just brought up. This is my lifestyle, and this is what I think could work. I think by the person energetically putting that out there, it's like this ping, and somehow you are the connector, and you're able to pick up on that. And then that soul, that dog comes just at the right time. And you're able to pick that up and be like, here you go. And I know for me, and I know I'm not the only one, you were like, Robyn, I think this is your dog. It's the dog for your family. And I remember at the time not knowing if we were ready. And you're like, I so believe it. I will hold on to her because I know you're driving through Tennessee and you'll just see. And it was that kind of magic. Like we got out of the car and it was like, yep.
Lucy did go sit by Robyn's family immediately and wanted nothing to do with anyone else. It was pretty special.
Yeah. And she's changed our lives. My hope too is that by hearing Gale's story, by Gale putting all of this out there, that we can all help pair these soul animals with their rightful people in this lifetime, because it is such a life-changing experience to have that kind of relationship and love. And I'm just so grateful for Samson, for you, and for all of it. How can people find out more about Gale Loves Dogs? Where can they go?
Yes. So the book, first of all, has its own website. So that's petlossgrief.info. And it's available wherever you buy books. So paperback and ebook right now. And then galelovesdogs.com is the rescue website. So if you want to do what I do and foster, I'm looking for fosters, and you can be located anywhere. I'm going to figure out how to identify the fosters that want to pull out of shelters local to them, rehabilitate the dogs for weeks to months, and then once we know the dog's personality, we can pair them. Because the other thing you can do on the website is tell me, here's what I'm looking for, when I'm looking for it. And then that will give me the information to make those energetic connections on the dogs and the families. And then also I will accept donations on the website. But the cool thing, I'm trying to reimagine dog rescue to find new ways of getting revenue in to save lots of dogs. So that's one of the reasons why I was like, it's a perfect fit to have the profits from the book go to try and do this with the dog rescue.
Thank you so much. We're going to have all of the links, and we'll also put the link to that TED Talk that you mentioned in our show notes. We cannot recommend enough, if you've gone through pet grief or know someone that has or is going through it, to pick up this book and also check out Gale Loves Dogs as well. So thank you, Gale.
Thanks, Robyn. Thanks, Karen.
And thanks, Samson.